So, welcome, Ashley.
Yeah,
Thanks for
thank you.
coming.
Yeah, thanks for
And
having me.
yeah, so today we're having Ashley here. He specializes in treating sciatica pain, and we just want to learn a little bit what you do and how things have been doing.
Yeah, thanks a lot for having me. It's good to be here. So, yeah, I'm a Marin-based physical therapist, but I work with people pretty much all throughout the state and the country, very similar to like what you do, but from a different perspective. And so, really, the idea of physical therapy is making sure that you're moving the most efficient way as possible. I find that a lot of injuries are often caused not. I mean, yes, you have injuries due to trauma, but then you also have injuries that are often due to overuse injuries, and usually overuse is caused by the fact that we either are not recovering enough or we are moving very inefficiently. So our recovery does not meet the needs of our tissues. So that's where injury starts to happen. And so if we were to look into sciatica specifically, I started my practice myself in 2013 when I started practicing physical therapy. And when I started working with patients, especially with back pain and sciatica pain, I started to notice that my patients were actually recovering a lot faster than the other physical therapists around me. And not to think that I was anyone's particularly special, but I was trying to figure out, well, what was the biggest difference between myself and like the other practitioners around me? And one of the big things that I've learned was that understanding that when it comes to sciatic pain, specifically like nerve pain and spinal irritation, it's really what I like to call patient specific. So it's what is the person presenting me with? And the reality is that when you're treating something like sciatica pain, you're going to find 35 different stretches and exercises to treat that. But the reality is maybe about 7 to 10 of those actual exercises are actually beneficial. And then the remainder are either making things worse or they don't do anything. And knowing how busy we are as human, like just people in society, I said, why not simplify things? And so I started looking at, okay, well, how do we make it so that we can just have a very simplified way to address sciatica pain and really looking at the patient? So the way that I've been treating people is really, I like to call it like a test-retest, cause and effect type of scenario. So an example is someone says, my leg hurts, my back hurts every time I bend forward and touch my toes. It tells me, all right, well, most likely their body doesn't like to round forward. Okay, well, let's break down what in their life or how often in their life during their day are they rounding forward? Okay, well, we need to change that number of times that they're rounding forward, but then also, well, what if we do a backwards bend, the exact opposite of that motion? Oh, it reduces their pain. Perfect. We want to find more opportunities to lean into those techniques and exercises that actually reduce their pain. And then so from that simplicity, I started to think, okay, well, how can I start really spreading the word about this and make it more accessible? Because I know that, like, especially out here in the US, it's either you don't have insurance, you have a traditional commercial insurance, or you have the typical Medicare. So the reality is that you need to have some sort of financial resource to pay for the care. And I struggled with a little bit in regards to, all right, well, I know I have to charge a certain amount to make my business grow and thrive. But then there's also people have to pay for me to fix this problem that they never wanted to have in the first place. So then I said, well, how can I create in a way where I provide value to people and start to really help people even without me being there? And I grew in developing this iFixer sciatica platform. So through my website, but then also through my podcast. And so the idea was going into this thinking, how can I be better than Dr. Google or the Reddit threads? How can I provide a much more actionable, much more directive way and provide an avenue for people to become more educated in the condition that they're dealing with? But then also use this as a platform for professionals like yourself to be able to come on and share your perspective because we're all in the business of helping people. But the reality is that I'm only seeing things through my lens and Dr. Ma here is seeing it from her lens. And so rather than saying, oh, well, acupuncture or the techniques that you use don't work, I think it's important that we actually work together and making it so that we are healthy
Yeah,
and feeling better. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, I used to work with our PD in our hospital, and yeah, we treat everything together. And well, sciatica pain is something that probably 10% of my patients will have. And a lot of time, maybe not specifically sciatica pain, but yeah, like you said, when it's like back pain or leg pain, and then we can trace it back. Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
something wrong with the sciatica nerve. It's important that different modalities we can work together, because it's not, I think we all want to see the human being as a whole. And it's not just that I'm fixing this part. And of course, I'm just focusing on this part, but it's still connecting to the whole body. So,
Yeah.
like what Chinese medicine is about, just to balance the whole energy. And now I learn more about like the muscles, the tissues, and the fascia. So it's all connected. Probably you have something at your ankle, but it will connect to your face. And probably that's something that, like, by working on the muscles, how to train yourself, that helps to
Exactly.
correct your
Yeah.
posture and everything, right?
And what I really appreciate about acupuncture is that here you are like focusing on the energy flow, right? The chi. And what's really interesting is that like in westernized medicine, that chi is like the way that we describe it is we call it neurotransmitters. So it's pretty much the chemical and electrical currents that happen along the nerves and synapses. And so like we're talking about the same thing just from a different
Mhm.
lens and perspective.
Yes.
Yeah, it's cool.
Cool. Your platform, how does it work?
My YouTube channel actually has, I think, over 200, 250 videos of various different exercises. Now, what's really great is like for YouTube is that like there's an endless array of exercises. And so, really, the key is identifying which exercises work. And so, I think where really the magic happens in the majority of our professions is the thought process as to why we're having one specific exercise versus the other. And so it can be provided either on a virtual basis, an in person basis, or even just using the resources that are available to our fingertips. And even I think where people get a lot of value is like they might come across a video on Instagram or TikTok or whatever platform, and they'll send it to me and say, "Hey, Ashley, what do you think about this exercise?" And then when I get that information, I like to think, well, how does this fit in the context of the person who's talking to me right now? So, say, for example, like a split squat or a walking lunge. All right, well, do they need more hip stability, more ankle stability? Do they need more hip strength? Are they having issues going up and down stairs? Or are they looking to just get strong without putting a lot of pressure on their back? And the questions are pretty much endless in regards to how can we make it fit? And really, is the idea is that how can we make it fit into the context of the person who's working with us?
Oh, yeah, that's, I think that to identify which works is really important,
Yeah.
because, yeah, and it's like a lot of patients come to me and then I ask, do they exercise? And they say, yeah, I do Pilates, I go to yoga. But the thing is, it doesn't really fit to what they need. And they really need someone to train on what specific muscle or how to stretch or something like that. So
Yeah.
that's very important.
Extremely important. I think, especially, I love yoga. I love Pilates. I think it's important for people to follow whatever activity that they find to be enjoyable, but then also recognizing the limitations from each specific practice. So, like, say for yoga, they might not necessarily have as much, say, strength or resistance training. If that's the case, then even just trying to add the minimum necessary to facilitate change. So, like, build up strength or build a good solid foundation.
True.
I guess we'll put it into three phases. So phase number one is before they actually even come to see me. So it's like the mechanism of how they got injured in the first place. And I think the biggest mistake that people make when they're even just trying to either get into shape or currently working out is that they don't necessarily have a clear goal in mind as to why they're doing said exercise or activity. And so what ends up happening is that if you don't have a clear idea on why you're doing something, why you're choosing yoga or why you're choosing weightlifting, it's really easy to either do too much of it or do things improperly just because you might not necessarily know what is being done correct or what isn't being done correctly. So I think that's funnel number one. It's like what brings people into a little bit more pain, which leads them to coming to see someone like me, either with me or for any other practitioner. And I think one of the challenges is that when they're working or even just trying to fix said pain, It can be really overwhelming when you are having pain and try to figure out what to do, because there's so many resources. You can Google exercises for sciatica and you're going to find, again, 30 plus exercises to treat
Mm.
sciatica. And so because there is so much information, the biggest mistake is doing every single one and not reassessing on whether or not it's actually helping you. Although it might seem like a slower approach, I'm a big proponent of, when you're in active state of pain, you do one specific exercise or stretch or technique, one practitioner or a couple practitioners, and then reevaluate how you feel just after you complete it. And then be able to say, is this getting me closer or farther away from make myself feel better? And for the most part, you will get a pretty good idea on whether or not it's making you feel better pretty quickly. Because when you are in an active state of pain and you are experiencing this pain with specific activities, you can tell the intensity and how much your pain changes with the activities that you do. Once you're fixed, or once you are, say, out of the care, you're no longer having to manage your own pain anymore, we then get into the post rehab. I call it the relative danger zone, because this danger zone is where you're feeling pretty good. You want to get back into those other activities that you wanted to do in the first place, but you aren't really quite sure how to get back into it. And I know for me, taking time off and then going back into something, my mind is much stronger than my body. And so what ends up happening is that when we get to this point, is the two major mistakes is, one, people jump back into their activities way too quickly. They go from like not working out to working out 2 hours a day. And that's often a recipe for injury, just because
You're
of
still
fatigue.
weak.
You're weak and fatigued. And then the second reason is you can fall back on your old habits as to what led you getting hurt in the first place. And so I think what's important during that danger zone is to listen to your body and recognize, how long have I been out of this? But then also, what did I do, or what about this specific activity brought me to the initial problem in the first place?
And like in the first phase, how do people know like I'm working with the good physical therapist? Like with the exercise, how soon will they feel it? Like after a week or just a couple of days? And how does it work?
I like to think when you're dealing with pain, especially my profession as a physical therapist, we're acting as detectives. And really, that's a large part of medicine in the first place, is detective work, where we're trying to get some information to get a very high suspicion or guess that the issue is X, Y, or Z. And so from there, when you're in an active state of pain, I believe that you can actually tell whether or not something's working relatively quickly. And what does that mean? It can be as short as the first stretch that you do. It could also even be within the first week, because uh, I wish we had all the time in the world, but the reality is most of our sessions are about an hour long. There's only so much information that you can get into an hour. So what I usually find is, usually within the first 1 to 3 visits, we'll get an idea of what's working and what's not working. But especially during the time, we can definitely find ways to, what I like to call, modulate the pain. So it's either we can certainly know what is going to intensify your pain, or we discover things that are going to reduce your pain. And then the third part is like, we know what you can do that's not going to affect your pain at all. And I think that we can find that pretty early on in the relationship, usually within the 1 to 3 visits.
Okay. So after that, when they feel good and go to the what you mentioned, like the danger zone,
Mhm.
do you think they still need to come back to see you during that period of time, just to like make sure they're not doing the wrong things, even though they're not as pained?
I think that there's two pathways that you can follow. Excuse me. Pathway number one is, we do what is called reducing the frequency. So instead of saying like meeting once a week, you reduce it to meeting every 2 weeks or something like that. And that's where I find it, you get a little bit more independence, but you're having that lifeline there for you in the event that something does go wrong. But then also knowing that you're having someone who will, I like to call, graded exposure. So like, you're hurt, you're used to doing 100% of activities, and then you went from doing 0%, rather than going to 100%. I myself would say, all right, we're going to get to 50% of your activity. Now, what does that look like? It's going to be, instead of an hour of yoga, it'll be 30 minutes of yoga. Or if it's going to be a 30-minute walk, you're going to do a 15-minute walk. So that's scenario number one, where we would reduce the frequency. The second option would be, instead of reducing the frequency, really just having someone like me be there more so as the emergency button. So we wouldn't book any sessions. We would still keep an open line of communication, and then we would actually talk about a specific plan. My general rule of thumb is for every month that you've been out or away from your activity because of injury is 1 week that it takes for you to get normal. So if you've been experiencing pain or this issue and you haven't been able to do your activities for a whole year, it's going to be 12 weeks before you go back to being 100%. So we would work backwards. And it's like, okay, well, 100%, we probably want to increase about 10 to 15%. So you're looking at maybe even starting at 30 to 40% of what you're used to, and then ensuring that we have specific guidelines that would allow you to move to the next stage.
Very useful. Yeah, I work with our PTs, but we never really talk about like how much they work on the patient and how far they'll go. I'm usually the one like in the beginning when they need to having the muscles like relax more and stopping the pain more. So I'm pretty much just right in the beginning, but after that, they're usually just with the PT.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like to think about where you're working specifically on the nervous system, the muscular system. I like to say like the body work, right? Like a lot of times people think body work is just massage, but it's anything that's going to be influencing the nervous system. So any sort of hands on, whether it be the adjustments by a chiropractor, even if any of the surgical techniques that surgeons use or what acupuncturists use is like you using your acupuncture needles to actually directly influence the nervous system. I like to use that, like that bodywork umbrella as kind of like your car. You're going to have like the mechanics who will tighten the screws on your wheels or like change your engine if need be. But the often like, because the car mechanics are so busy, they're not going to be the ones who have to teach you how to drive. Right. And so that's where I find the physical therapist would be really helpful is that once you get your car fixed, it's like, okay, now you're going to take your car on the road. Now you have a new car. You need to make sure that you're driving responsibly, making sure that you're easing into the stoplights or you're slowing down before you make a turn. We're the ones who actually teach you how to use your body once it is repaired.
It reminds me of one of the patients. She had a like delayed delivery during she had the baby, and then she was holding her legs up for so long, which compressed the nerves. And then after giving birth, her right leg was paralyzed, and actually it also did damage the nerve on the left leg, but it's not as bad. So most of the time we just focus on the right. So in the beginning, I was doing a lot of acupuncture for her for about 3 months. But by the end, at the middle, she still when she started to be able to walk and stand, our PT started to train her how to walk, how to be stable, how to like the position to walk. Like it's just like going back to where you start learning to walk when you're
Oh
like
yeah.
1 years old. For me, it's like, wow, I never thought of how to like really train people to walk when they kind of like it's not forget, it's like they're having a different pair of legs, and then
Yeah.
they need to like learn how to balance and how to train their ankle,
Yeah.
how to lift, and how
Mhm.
to use the muscles from the thigh or the calf or yeah, so
Yeah.
it's very interesting like what you just said. It's like
Yeah, it's
yeah.
huge. Like I think it's the human mind likes stories. That's why like books are so important, or even like when people are giving speeches or talks that they're creating like this like relative or just like relative analogies, right? And so I think it's important, like especially the when you're hurt, it's either due to a trauma or just overall degeneration of how we move. And so when you are experiencing a trauma, not only are you experiencing like an actual physical trauma, but also it kind of gets imprinted. And so I hope no one ever gets into an car accident, but like after your first car accident, you're pretty nervous getting back into the car. You're gripping the steering wheel, you're really tense. And so that's where I think someone like me, like a physical therapist, can be. It's like the person sitting next to you being like, it's okay, you're safe. So then you go from gripping the steering wheel to saying, I'm going to be okay. But the second part of that is, okay, well, now you have this new reality, you have this new car. Well, every car drives different, right? And so it is important to be able to see how your car is driving and get a feel for it before you start really pushing its limits or push and try to see what it's capable of doing. However, one of the things I find to be particularly awesome about your background, especially acupuncture, is that you can see and feel and sense things that I might not necessarily be aware of.
Mhm.
So I've actually feel really good, but can I let you figure out, like, find something on me? Would that be
Sure.
okay?
Sure, sure,
Okay,
sure, no
awesome.
problem.
Because I think that What's interesting is physical therapy on one hand, I think it can be more on the reactive side of things. Not very often that people come to physical therapy. Like injury prevention is something that we are capable of doing. Injury prevention is a little bit, it's harder to visualize when you're feeling pretty good. And because of that, I can see a little bit more of a challenge from an injury prevention for the physical therapy profession. Acupuncture, on the other hand, if you can identify, hey, like there are things that I can sense that you aren't going to be aware of, I think that is it's a very cool aspect of your profession. So I actually recommend acupuncture a lot to my patients, even when they're feeling good, to go to an acupuncturist like yourself, because there's a lot of things that even myself can't see. And so and what's interesting, especially in physical therapy, or even just like posture and body mechanics, is that it's this concept of if we're looking for something, we're going to find something wrong. And I think that is something that can be a big limiting factor in the whole like injury prevention or like athletic world, where it's like, is it like an asymmetry that we're just dealing with normally and people get by just fine? Or is this asymmetry going to be a problem further down the road? So
Mm.
I think that, yeah, you'd be very well equipped to be able to analyze, to take a look.
Okay.
So I give you permission to see what you find, and then we'll take it from there.
Just have a seat.
Oh,
Let me check
okay, yes.
my hands are still a bit cold.
I'm very warm, so it's great.
So, besides of aches and pain, do you have like any sleeping issues or digestion problems?
Let's see. I only snore when I'm sleeping on my back.